Welcome everyone to this food and farming podcast brought to you by AHDB. I am your host Lisa Bray, and today we'll be talking about the recently launched, as of May 2024, Environment Baselining Pilot. On the sofa with me is our CEO Graham Wilkinson. Welcome, Graham.
Thank you, Lisa.
Our Director of Environment, Chris Gooderham. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Lisa.
So the Environment Baselining Pilot gives the opportunity for up to 170 farms across England, Wales and Scotland to measure unique environmental data about their farm. So I just want to take a little step back from the baselining pilot and begin to understand why HDB has launched it and kind of why now. Why such a big investment? So Graham, I've worked at HDB for quite a few years and it's been dominated predominantly by the environment. It's a huge topic. It never ceases to amaze me how complex it is and how controversial it is, even within the industry. You've got to grips with that over the last 2 months, and along with your industry experience, what are the real challenges that our industry faces in this area?
Lisa, I think recognising the complexities the whole environmental topic brings, not just, there's a lot of focus very much around carbon, but recognising the other areas, biodiversity, water, there's so many different areas as part of that bigger picture. And I think this is what the baselining project is really, what I'm really excited about this pilot, because it starts to bring in those other areas, clearly still with a focus around carbon, but recognising the other areas. We know that our farmers and our growers are producing food to very high sustainable levels, and I think we've got a lot to be proud of in environmental performance that our British farmers and growers are delivering to. Yeah. But we also, so that firstly, being able to demonstrate that from a reputational perspective, I think is absolutely important.
Yep.
I think secondly, recognising that there are areas that we need to deliver on. We've got there's various targets out there. We're aiming towards sort of net zero, but there's also SBTI requirements within the supply chains as well. So there's a number of factors coming down. So when I speak to farmers and growers, they get the why, but supporting farmers and growers around the what they need to do and how they need to do it on their individual farm, I think is so important. So we know we need to improve, and I think this is where the output, which I'm really excited about, the baselining project, will then help us. Clearly, future policy needs to play a factor in this as well. So recognising that policy changes need to be considered, and then also from a recognising just what we've experienced over the last few months, Lisa, climatic changes, farming in a volatile climate is proving very challenging. So recognising that this volatile climate that we're operating in, hopefully the pilot will start to recognise some of the opportunities and to be able to then support farmers and growers in those kind of that volatile way.
Thanks, Graham. So, Chris, how does the industry tackle some of these issues? What's really missing to enable us to take hold of it and run with it?
There's a lot of conversations that we've had, that we continue to have, are using averages. They're using averages to make policy decisions. They're using averages to make supply chain decisions. And actually, when you see reporting of our industry, it's using averages. Yeah. And so there's a real lack of granularity in the data. We don't pick up the nuances of particular farmer behaviour in those averages. Actually, there's no incentive for farmers to improve because they just get averaged down. And there's no way to compare and contrast to see what works, what improves things. And that's what we want to do with the baselining pilot. We want to be able to look across different farm systems, look across different land uses and soil types, and say, okay, what has driven an improvement, and what is it that we could then encourage further improvement by looking at those wins effectively.
So the baselining pilot will do above ground carbon measurement, so in trees and hedgerows. below ground carbon measurement, so in your soils. It will do soil analysis, carbon footprinting across the whole business, and runoff mapping. Now, these aren't new measurements. This is not new data collection. Many farmers out there are doing this and potentially more. And I went to the Low Carbon Ag Show recently and saw the scale of what's available out there and how big it is growing. Why is AHDB investing so heavily, £2.5 million in levy, in what could be argued as an already very busy area? Graham?
So we've talked about the complexities around this. I think there is also a sense of confusion around this whole area as well. And I want to see AHDB cutting through that confusion on behalf of levy payers. I'm a big fan of simplification, so it's certainly something that I want to drive hard as an organisation. But ultimately, our foundation is our independence, which I think is our uniqueness, and being very much our data-driven approach. So I don't think it's a question as to why we should be involved. I think it's absolutely imperative that we're involved on behalf of our levy payers.
You know, we've spoken to quite a few players who are out there looking to do some form of baselining. Some of them are doing some form of baselining, and where we can, we're going to bring them into the project as well. So, you know, we would not duplicate work that's being done. But so if somebody's done some of the soil sampling, for example, and they're happy to share that data with us, then we might do the above ground and you know, combine it into one big data set. We're also working with QMS in Scotland.
Yeah.
So they are putting funding into this project to make sure that we can cover beef and lamb farmers across both England and Scotland. And again, that's partly to avoid duplication of work. You know, it's pointless the levy bodies working individually on that. So you know, we will be, you know, looking for farmers to show an interest in coming in, expressing an interest in joining the project, and we would encourage those that are part of some of these groups to do that.
We're not in competition here. This is all about collaboration.
Yep. So, Chris, if this kind of data was collected, pooled, comparable, what benefits would it bring to the industry?
So you know, we've talked previously the fact that there's a lack of data out there. But one of the key things we need to understand is what are the drivers that deliver the environmental improvement. And we know some of this already, but some of it, the evidence is quite small on. So, for example, there was work done in Northern Ireland by Professor John Gilliland with his ARC Zero. There's 7 farms there. Some of those farms are already beyond net zero. So we want to know, well, was that a fluke, or is that actually something that we would see across a wider range of farms? We picked up from there that, you know, for most of those farms, 95% of the carbon stocks were actually in the soil. They weren't in the trees and hedges. Yep. And there's a lot of focus. There has been a lot of focus on planting more trees within the UK. But we want to say, well, okay, but what is the potential in soil as well? Because we believe there is quite a significant opportunity to increase the carbon stocks in soil at depth. You know, so one of the things we'll be measuring is the soil carbon at depth, and looking at the different ranges within there, and then saying, well, what's driving that? And can we do a compare and contrast? So looking at different land uses, different soil types, you know, looking at monocultures versus multi-species, you know, and that's the same whether you're looking at monoculture ryegrass or even trees and hedges. Yeah. So we will be looking at the non-productive land as well as the productive land, so that we can do that compare and contrast within both of those.
Could it influence the carbon market for farmers, which at the moment is a Wild West?
It provides data that could feed into the discussions on the carbon market. I think there are challenges around data. You know, there is value in the data itself. There's also value in improving your environmental performance if it flows through into a particular product, and there's claims on products, for example. But it's a little bit muddy at the moment, I would say, because averages are used so much. And so those averages don't pick up the improvements that a particular farm would be delivering. They get averaged down. And so there's no recognition, and therefore it's very difficult to then reward that improvement because there is no recognition of it because of these averages. So the plan is that this would help to build a picture that we can then use.
I think that's key, and I think we all know that farms are very, very different. So,
Indeed.
so being able to identify from an individual farm perspective, and I think also some of the technology that we're looking to use here, it just demonstrates how, I suppose, there's an opportunity to sort of really move this on and make sure. Fundamentally, what's important to me is that an individual farm is able to develop, have an evidence-based, data-led. I suppose the 170 farms as an example, they have a sort of a clear plan as to where they stand and the areas that they can work on to improve.
Yeah, be empowered to change things on their own farm business. So how does this all fit in with AHDB's ethos and where it's going for the future?
So I've been very clear, Lisa, that as an industry, I've talked about that the industry absolutely needs AHDB to step in and demonstrate that leadership. So this is just an example. Mm-hmm. There's going to be more examples. This is an example where we believe now is the right time for us to step up and really help demonstrate leadership, working in collaboration, working with others. We can't fix this purely by ourselves, but it's an opportunity. And I think the expertise within the organisation and the partnerships and links that we have outside of the organisation makes it absolutely critical that AHDB does this. So I'm looking forward to sharing more examples of clear leadership where we're stepping up on behalf of our levy payers in helping them in delivering a sort of a sustainable future.
Chris, we've talked a lot about what it delivers for the industry, but this is asking for up to 5 years of time for levy payers who want to get involved. What does it bring for them on a day-to-day, as a farm business, as a farmer, the success for the future? Why should they get involved?
The key for me is that this is going to provide them with information about their farm that they've never seen before. Mm-hmm. So we're going to look at, we'll do a carbon audit with them, but we'll also be measuring the carbon stocks within the ground and above the ground. We'll be testing and challenging some of the satellite technology to see whether that could deliver some of the claims that are out there. We'll be looking at runoff risks as well as carbon stocks. We'll be looking at habitat connectivity, and then there'll be an action plan that will be brought together with the farmer that's specific to their farm, looking at the areas where they potentially don't benchmark as well as others do, maybe, and areas where there could be an improvement. And that's what this is all about, really, is then looking at the areas where there's a win-win. So the things that farmers can do will improve their environmental performance, but it'll also put more money into their back pocket. It's a financial wins. And there are things like genetics, improving animal health and welfare, for example, would all be things that would sit within that, or even more efficient use of fertilizer. Mm-hmm. And what this evidence and data does is it provides the information to be able to make those decisions.
What do we expect to see in terms of results and actions? Because I'm assuming we're not waiting 5 years to hear what the outcomes are.
No, it's really critical that we start to look at the results from that baselining in year one. Mm-hmm. So picking the right farms, we are asking farmers to express an interest in this, and then what we need to do is effectively create a matrix of farms here. So we're covering all the different soil types and land uses and farming practices, et cetera, because we want to compare and contrast. So ideally, we want some farms that are at the beginning of their journey on the environment, and then other farms who are partway through it, so that we can look at what changes have already delivered, and then we'll use that to give a picture for the industry, and we'll use that to look at the key metrics that are driving improvements. So, for example, what drives higher levels of carbon in the soil? Is that pH? Is it fungi? Is it multi-species? And what can it deliver off the back of that? And then similarly with some of the pushing of the technology, what else can the technology deliver? How can we make this more cost effective so that maybe we could roll this out further and wider? Yeah. Because it is an expensive project to deliver, but testing the technology, and the technology is moving on all the time. What are the critical bits? What are the critical bits that we can pull out and then say, you know what? if we were to roll this out, this is what we need to do.
And I think that's a really important point, because it's looking beyond the 170 farm pilot. What we learn and how we can, as I say, scale it, I think is really key, not just to this project, but in everything we do in AHDB, so we can maximise its output.
And will we support them with that? Would we help them in advisory position?
So we will be going out to tenders on all of these areas. So one of those areas will be effectively the carbon audit and the action plan that comes off the back of it.
Right, I see. So they will sort of be handheld through that process, because it's pretty big.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in the modern age, data is one of the most valuable commodities. We're asking farmers to measure more data, and they are increasingly asked to measure more data. It raises questions over sort of custodianship. Who owns this data? Where does the value lie with this data? Has AHDB thought about that? Has it addressed that, Graham?
So it's certainly an area that, when it comes to leadership, I think AHDB can play an even bigger part. I think we've got examples of where, and Chris can maybe divulge a little bit more in those areas as well. We've got examples where it's worked really well. But I also then look upon, I suppose, the future of data and custodianship. I'm a firm believer that you record it once and it's used in multiple times. And I think duplication is just it just doesn't add value. So I think we have a role to play there, but ultimately being able to then capture the data, the evidence-based data, then building plans around it, so it gives individual farmers and growers sort of clear evidence points, and they're able to build that plan around it on their individual farms, in where they can potentially make improvements.
I mean, from a data custodian perspective, we already do this on behalf of the industry in some areas. So we do that particularly on animal health and welfare. So we oversee the medicine hub, which is gathering data from individual farmers on their medicine usage, and we report on it for the industry as an aggregated position. We've been doing it for many years with the medicine book, which is a very similar thing on the pig side. So we've got precedent really on being able to hold this data and to use it in a responsible way without divulging individual farm data to people that they don't want it being divulged to.
Thank you both for joining me on the sofa. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. If you'd like to know more about AHDB's Environment Baselining Pilot, or you'd like to register to be a participating farm, please go to the website ahdb.org.uk and it'll be all there on the homepage. You've been listening to the Food and Farming Podcast with me, Lisa Bray, our CEO, Graham Wilkinson, and Director of Environment, Chris Gooderham. Thank you for listening and hope to see you again soon.